Good morning, everyone. Welcome to UUCC, the Unitarian Universalist Church of Canandaigua. I'm Eileen, your minister, and I'm so glad to be with you today. This morning, our worship service is led by our lay leader, Dorothy, and two folks from Justice for Migrant Families, Kara and JB. And we're so glad to welcome everyone who's here to lead worship with us today. Before we begin, I have a couple of quick announcements for you. The first is that if you would like to participate in a small spiritual development group, we call them Soul Matters groups, and you're not already part of one, I'd love it if you reach out to me. You can reach out by phone or by email, and we will get you plugged into an existing group, or if there are enough folks who are eager to join but not already participating, we'll start a new group. Second, I need some photos from all of you for our service on October 25th. So I need photos of your ancestors. They might be your parents, your grandparents, aunts or uncles, or great aunts or uncles, or your spiritual or emotional ancestors, someone who helped raise you in a way and is now gone. And that's up to you to determine the boundaries of. But I'd love photos of those folks for our service, for a special part of our service in remembering our ancestors. If you could email those to me, my email is minister@canandaiguauu.org. That would be great. Thank you so much. And now let us take a deep breath in and we enter a space of worship.
Other hearts in other lands are beating, with hopes and dreams as true and high as mine. Other lands have sunlight too, and clover, and skies are everywhere as blue as mine. This is from our hymn, The Song of Peace, that reminds us to turn our eyes and our imagination to the homelands of other people, and to seek to understand how high and true their hopes and dreams are. If they cannot remain in their homeland, still those hopes and dreams come with them. From within the walls of a detention facility, the sun and skies are hidden, and their freedom has been cruelly curtailed. Who cares about them? Who cares for them? How do their dreams survive?
Friends, if you have a chalice or a candle nearby, will you light it with me? This morning we light our chalices together and we say our chalice lighting words. We gather this hour as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning, in celebration of the life we share together. And now let us join in singing our first hymn, Come, Come, Whoever You Are.
Wanderer, worshiper, lover
Now is the time in our service where we hold one another in all the deepest feelings of our hearts. We are a community where we can hold one another in our deepest joys and in our greatest sorrows. So I ask you now, if you have joys or sorrows on your heart this morning, to please share them with us in the chat feature. And if you're watching on YouTube later on, you can share them in the comment section there. Are there any joys or sorrows to lift up this morning? This morning we hold in our hearts Scott and his mother, Aurora for her joyful move, Michelle's mother, the delights of autumn, Ariella's job search, young hockey players and their family, Brianna Taylor's family, and all those joys and sorrows left silent deep within us. Together in all our greatest feelings, know that we are with you. And now is the time in our service to enter into the spiritual practice of generosity. We ask you this morning if you're able to give generously to the good work of our community. We as a church are funded by your generous gifts, and you can give via a link that I'll place in the chat, or you can give by sending a check to the church. In either case, I ask you to note on that check or in that link that you would like your offering to be shared, to go to this morning's plate collection, in which case it will be shared with our monthly service partner. And now it's time for some centering and reflection.
We sang together, "Come, come, whoever you are," an invitation to all who journey in this life. How do we extend this hand of welcome to immigrants? Many are caught up suddenly by events, as said in Ecclesiastes 9:12. No one knows what will happen next. Like a fish caught in a net, or a bird caught in a trap, people are trapped by evil when it suddenly falls upon them. I'd like to introduce Kara Stratton, who can speak of what happens when the evil of detention falls on immigrants here.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me here again. I wish it was in person, but it's nice to see. I see some familiar faces. So I'm really happy to be back with this congregation. This is a large topic. And my friend JB is going to speak in much more detail about his own experiences. So I'm just going to highlight some of the ongoing things that Justice for Migrant Families and in general the immigrant advocacy groups I know are doing right now. Now more than ever, there are people who are detained as well as people who have been released from detention really need our solidarity. And I say solidarity because it's not help, it's not charity, this is a movement in which we realize that our own well-being, our own liberation, our futures are all intertwined. So I really want to focus on that solidarity. What we do for someone who's in detention is only going to benefit all of us. As an organization, Justice for Migrant Families believes in the abolition of detention centers for immigration and in the financial support and for community-based alternatives to detention so that people who are going through immigration proceedings can be with families, can have a community, can go to church, can have friends, can have lives like the rest of us while they're going through these difficult things. So people who have been in the US for many, many years, who have families and communities, as well as people who are fleeing very terrible situations, are all put into detention, immigrant detention. And they are put there without guaranteed legal representation, with very few options for free legal representation. They are put in there without information on why they are there or what is going to happen. Most people there do not know that they're going to have a court hearing, for example, until maybe the day or two before, and they don't know if they're going to have representation or not at that court hearing. They are put there without activities because immigrant detention, unlike the criminal justice system, is supposed to not be punitive and it's supposed to be temporary. So there's nothing to do inside of detention. There's no classes, no education, no regularly scheduled activities that can sustain people and keep people going from day to day. And they are put in there without real outside connection. And they have to stay there sometimes indefinitely. If someone's going through immigration proceedings and their particular country is not accepting people for deportation, and that is very much the case with a lot of countries right now because of COVID-19. They are not accepting people from the US. People just sit and sit and sit and wait. There are people there for 3 years, 4 years, 7 years. And again, it's not a place that is set up for long-term stays. So what do we do? There is so much to do right now in this world, in this moment. So one thing I do to get through my days is to say I can do one small thing. And one small thing, again, can make a huge difference. One small thing that your congregation has helped with in the past has been commissary, sending some money that goes directly to people's commissary accounts. Right now, because of COVID, the impacts of COVID, there is no visitation. People can't get visitors. And most legal visits are also curtailed, so people can't see their lawyers. As a result, people have to call their friends and family, and they have to call if they want to report an abuse or if they want to just connect to the outside world, and if they want to talk to their lawyers. That all costs money for them, and that all comes out of their commissary account. The other thing is that there are very few protections in place in detention to protect against COVID. And again, JB might say more about this. Any protections that there are there because of outside pressure. So people still have to buy soap. They get a tiny, like, hotel room sized bar of soap a week, and anything extra for washing hands in shared spaces has to come through what they buy on commissary. JB was telling me that soap costs over $3. Toothpaste costs about $6, and commissary for a local call, and again, these are not people coming from Western New York, most of them, is 29 cents a minute. And these are people, again, where most people are coming because they're seeking asylum. They do not have a lot of money, or they're coming to the United States to seek some kind of better life. There's not a lot of funds for them to buy things like soap or to pay for a phone call to their lawyer. So before COVID happened, we were receiving about 8 requests a month for commissary. Since then, because of all the changes and the loss of any real human connection, as well as the added need for hygiene, as of today, I checked this morning, we got 50 requests this morning for commissary. We budget for 20 commissaries a month at $25. And there's a $5 surcharge that the private corporation gets. And that's $10,000 a year just for commissary. So that is a huge need that I don't think is talked about a lot when you're talking about immigration issues. There are many, many more. We're running a phone line so that people can call and just speak, or ask for a ride if they need it, if they're released from detention, or ask for shelter if they're released from detention. We're always looking for volunteers. It's you can do it right from your home with an anonymous phone number. There's pen pals. There's so many things. There's a group in Batavia that makes backpacks and just fills them with like a water bottle and some snacks and maybe a $20 bill, so that when people are released and they get on a bus, they have something to soothe their journey. So I'm going to leave it at that. If anyone wants to talk about any of these things with me any further, Dorothy can connect you with me if you don't already have my contact. So thank you again.
And now we're pleased to welcome our speaker, JB, this morning.
Just quickly, I wanted to say, sorry, I missed my cue. We knew JB for a long time while he was in detention through various programs, visitation and such, but I didn't get to meet him until he was released shortly after COVID started. And I tell him this all of the time, but I am hoping that he is going to become a lawyer, because he is the best advocate for himself and everyone he meets. He is just an amazing person who has done so much for people inside detention and out, and just a joy to have in our community. So thank you, JB, for speaking today.
Right. Thank you very much. Good morning, all. My name is JB, and I'm from Nigeria. I came into this country in June 2017 and later decided to seek for asylum. In line with the US immigration law, an asylum seeker is expected to file for an asylum within 1 year of arrival. While within the time frame, and on my 9th month in the United States, I visited a friend in Buffalo who came to the United States from Nigeria for a training. I had my first interaction with the Immigration and Customs Enforcement on the 15th March 2018. On that fateful day, my friend and I were intercepted by the Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents at a traffic stop. These officers were so hostile in the way and manner the arrest was handled. That day remained a stigma in my life. I was humiliated, dehumanized, and shackled like a criminal. Upon being taken into custody, I was rushed immediately to the hospital after being booked in. I ended up spending 3 nights at the hospital, battling with my blood pressure to be brought under control. Immigrants go through a lot of trauma right from the day they step into the facility until the day they either get deported or released. At this point, I would just like to give a brief description of what the facility looks like. It's a place located in Batavia that harbors an optimal capacity of about 660 detainees at a time. It is structured in such a way that it's divided into 8 units, with one particular unit dedicated for the female immigrants, and then the other 7 for the men. Now, again, you have about 3 tiers. You have those in blue uniform, those in the orange uniform, as well as those in the red uniform. The blue ones are those that are basically faced with immigration cases only, while the orange people, they are the ones that have mild or low criminal cases. And then the people on red are basically people from jails that have served time in the United States and are getting set to be deported to their country. In a particular unit, you have, at every point in time, you have about 64 detainees, of which you are meant to share this little or minimal space for feeding, for recreation, for sleeping, and all sorts. So that is just a brief description of where I am talking about today. As a result of being picked up by ICE at a traffic stop, I was detained in Buffalo Federal Detention Facility in Batavia for 25 months without access to a lawyer for majority of the time. During my imprisonment, I saw firsthand the horrors of immigration detention. The units in the facility were usually congested, giving little or no room for proper care and feeding. It was almost impossible to have a clear head and sound mind while in the facility. I personally saw and intervened when a fellow detainee from India attempted suicide. But rather than canceling the detainee, he was taken to a lockdown room as a punishment for attempting to take his life. There are usually a wide range of problems being faced by detainees that could lead to this kind of situation that this Indian found himself. They include communication problem. When I talk about communication problem, apparently I'm talking about immigrants, just like Kara said, people coming into this country, they don't have any experience, and they probably could not even speak English. So it is extremely difficult for them to communicate. And without communication, it's difficult for you to maneuver your way or find whatever you want in that particular facility. So communication is a major problem in the facility. Another one is inability to reach out to family members and friends while detained due to lack of funds. Kara just highlighted that, stating the obvious. A lot of people come into this country, already they are traumatized. Where they are coming from, they had one issue or the other, with the mindset that if they get into the United States, they will surely get a solution to the problem. But now, rather than having that solution, it's kind of being compounded by what they face in the facility. For example, just like she said, making a call is very expensive. Even though the amenities are there, telephones are provided, but if you don't have money, there is no way you can get to the outside world. You can't talk to your family members. You can't talk to your friends. So you get trapped in that particular situation. Another one is the food that is being served. If you are the type prior to your getting into the facility that is so used to good type of food, or you at least have a reasonable portion of food when eating, you are going to meet a different ball game entirely at that particular facility. The food, they are extremely bad. In my own situation, many times I refuse to eat the food, looking for an alternative means of eating. Most of the time when we're being served with bread, I usually keep them so that I can, pounce on them much later in the day or at night. And then the most important of all that a lot of people face in that facility is what we refer to as loneliness or suicidal thoughts, just like the Indian that I mentioned. Now, how do they get to that point when most of them can probably do not have a means of communicating to each other? They cannot really express themselves. So all the issues that are disturbing them will probably be aggravated, and then it will be bottled up to the point that they don't even have anywhere to look up to see. And then at the end of the day, they sit down all alone thinking about that particular point in their life when they most needed help, and the help is nowhere to be found. So that is what brings most of the time a lot of detainees to start thinking of how they could end their life, which happened most of the time in the facility. Dealing with most of these issues can be very challenging, most especially if you do not have what it takes to deal with them. The system is designed in such a way to break the detainees. It is frustrating to the extent that one might begin to think of giving up the struggle, which may finally lead to one's deportation. It takes courage, tenacity, and perseverance to face the challenges. In my own situation, my background has helped me a lot. I was able to communicate effectively. I had a tertiary education back home that assisted in putting me in shape for these challenges. And I had equally worked in Nigeria as a banker. That made me to understand how things should be in an ideal setting and how to go about achieving my own set goals and objectives while operating within the confines of the law. Relating with other detainees and discussing with them is equally a factor that helped. Getting engaged by reading and playing ping pong, a game I love so much, equally helped a great deal. Keeping to the rules and regulations of the facility is another salient factor. Otherwise, any contrary stance will be used against you in court. With the help of the Justice for Migrant Family, I had volunteers coming to see me at the facility virtually every other week, which actually helped me to maintain my sanity. The recent coronavirus pandemic has made it worse. The facility was never ready and can never meet the CDC guidelines that talked about social distancing, washing hands with soap and sanitizers in order to avoid the spread of the virus, and most importantly, wearing masks. The reason being that most times the facility is always at its optimal capacity, and as such, detainees continue to share the limited space available for feeding, sleeping, playing, as well as making use of the bathrooms. Therefore, there was no way social distancing could be met. As at the last count, over 50 people had contacted the virus. The facility does not have what it takes to treat COVID detainees. Rather, detainees were being taken out of the facility for treatment. No ventilators in the facility should it come to that. After spending 25 months at the facility in Batavia, I'm going through all the stages of attempting to secure a bond and being denied every time, despite the fact that I had no criminal record. I was finally released in April due to a class action lawsuit concerning the health of detainees. That lawsuit led to ICE releasing detainees of recent so as to decongest the detention center. Unfortunately, I have remained on an order of supervision with an ankle bracelet around my foot, which is so embarrassing, but better than being in the facility. ICE took this action because they feel I will be what is referred to as risk of flight. But here I am, almost 5 months down the line. I have not flown anywhere, and I'm still very much resident in New York. The fact remains that a lot of detainees, including myself, do not have family members in the United States. Therefore, after release, they are faced with a lot of challenges like feeding, clothing, and housing, which constitute the basic necessities of life. With the help of the Justice for Migrant Family, I have been fortunate enough to have all the above mentioned provided. The greatest concern, therefore, is sustenance. Realizing that this organization looks for volunteer members to saddle this enormous responsibility. The ability to keep it going is always what I think about. Currently, my case is ongoing. I do not have a work permit. Therefore, my greatest concern is always what happens to me if my rent could no longer be paid? What happens if I could no longer be catered for in terms of the weekly stipends I get for feeding? And finally, what happens to my other personal needs that the organization takes care of? This is why I pray that volunteers should always continue to fund the organization so that we can continue to have the benefits until we are up and running ourselves. At this point, it's important to mention that there are meaningful actions that allies can take to help detainees. These include assisting detainees in getting adonis, as many detainees coming into this facility do not even know their right from the left. ICE officials oftentimes are nasty. Another area is assisting detainees to have access to their family members. This can be achieved by crediting detainees' commissary account with token. Allies can equally assist by writing to detainees to encourage them to keep hope alive. Finally, by visiting detainees at the detention center, even though definitely not at this time of the pandemic. All these measures, if taken, will go a long way to stabilize and maintain the psyche of the detainees. Finally, let me end with this plea. I would like the members of this congregation to continue to support the Justice for Migrant Family so that the organization can in turn continue to strongly support immigrants, both within and outside the facility. I thank you all for this wonderful opportunity afforded me to share my experience with you. God bless you.
This is my song, O God of all the nations, a song country's skies are bluer than the ocean, and sunlight beams on clover leaf and pine. But other lands have sunlight too, and clover, and skies are everywhere as blue as mine. Oh, hear my song, oh God of all the nations, a song of peace for their land and for mine.
Our benediction today is from reading number 709 in the old hymnal. Be doers of the word and not merely hearers. Those who look into the perfect law, the law of liberty, and persevere, being not hearers who forget, but doers who act, they will be blessed in their doing.
We are going, heaven knows where we are going, but we know within we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. It will be hard, we know, and the road will be muddy and rough, but we'll get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. We are going, heaven knows where we are going, but we know within that we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
Now, with many thanks to this morning's preachers, Dorothy, Kara, and JB, for sharing your messages, let us extinguish our chalices together as we say our chalice extinguishing words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fires of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.